sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to another edition of Court Call with Ronnie Nunn. Ronnie, fresh off of knee surgery, how is the ambulation going?
Well, it's a brand new day today. I tell you, total knee replacement is not like your normal removement of debriding your knee. It's a whole new implant, and it's interesting. But I'm forging ahead. I'm forging ahead with it. So I'm still excited. It's an uplift to be with you and talk basketball while I'm healing up.
Well, everybody was clamoring for some new episodes, wondering where they were. So we have a double episode coming at you, one today and one tomorrow. So 10 great clips. And let's start off with Toronto and Brooklyn on the 27th, hooked up. And we had a real interesting controversial charge call on Kyle Lowry. So walk us through what you saw and tell me what you think if this was an appropriate call and the right one.
Yeah, I got it right up here on the screen right now. And the fact that you see this fast break, this is a very tough play. And the official is in the best position that actually she can get in at the time. The bottom line here on this play is when the bottom line on plays that are block charges or off-ball movements or between the defenders, the key to this is to make sure your eyes are always on the defender. Let's make it simple. And when you're in good position, it helps your eyes to be on the defender. And no matter what you're doing and where you are, you must go back to rule number one. Get your eyes on the defender. So the good news is she picks this up very early. And we find out here that Williams holds his spot. He decides to say, this is where I'm going to make my stand. And in doing so, Lowry realizes now he's got to try to slip that contact, and he really can't. And yes, there's movement, but the movement is backwards, not so much lateral. So this is a great play because the official stays with the defender, who is the only person that can hurt her.
Wow, I'm surprised that you'd agree with this because I saw it, especially with the replay, as a Euro step. He's now switched his vector going toward his left a lot more, and yet we see Darren Williams fall almost straight backwards, which to me feels a bit more like a flop than real contact.
Well, as I'm looking at the contact right here, he does slip it. There's enough contact to call something. I mean, this would look like a play that people would wonder why there's no block or charge called on it. But if you're going to go and make a call on this play, which I think you have to, I think the balance is tipped to a contact that needs to be addressed. The good news is the official gets it right because she recognizes that Deron Williams has taken a position. He's no longer chasing. Now the onus is on Lowry to decide that, I'm in a jam. I've got to go lateral steps to avoid this, a Gale Sayers, if you will, kind of approach to running on the field now that I have the ball in hand. And yes, does he get him in the sternum? No. But when a player already establishes position and you catch a shoulder and there's enough contact and that player is in a stable position as Deron Williams is, then for sure we have a charge play.
Okay, well, Violet Palmer, good call then. And for those of you guys who don't know Gale Sayers, you should watch Brian's song. I think you'll get a chance to understand what he was all about. Let's move on to our next call, which is Dallas and Phoenix were playing. And it was a very strange thing toward the end of the game where Vince Carter was trying to inbound the ball under pressure. And the whole thing got a little screwy. So walk us through what the rule is and if this call was even close to being right.
Well, you know what? This call was right, and it was a surprising call. But the official on the baseline really gets it right in that there was a violation by Vince Carter, and it usually happens the other way around. It's the offensive player, which he is, who violates. He actually extends the ball over the imaginary line of the baseline. And so, therefore, if any player touches it, the person that's really in the wrong is the thrower in. Because if it was the other way and the defender reached across the imaginary line and tipped that ball out of his hand, it would be a delay of game, of course, and maybe a possible technical if it's a multiple delay. So the bottom line here is he makes the extension of his arm, and now I think somebody touches it. Offense, defense, but the bottom line is nobody had to touch it had he not extended himself that way. An immediate response. It wasn't about the signal. I would have liked the signal that went something like this with ball in hand instead of the backcourt signal or you stepped onto the court signal. I don't think Vince ever stepped onto the court, but the ball extended itself beyond the reach that he should. And the signal should be ball signal about putting the ball in play. Of course, with a deflection.
So it's the equivalent of him throwing the ball in, having it deflected off of a player, and then hitting him again out of bounds, turnover.
Actually, that's the final point. Yes, it hits him again, and actually we have a turnover. So he could have gone either way with it. Either the fact that he hit it first, as you said, it gets to Vince Carter, who is out of bounds, or the problem that is deflected while he's creating this violation and somebody touches the ball, killing the play.
Just for you guys who are out there playing, the fundamentals are off here because you never want to cut across the court in front of the inbounder that close. The spacing is off, and it will lead to plays like that often. They needed to spread the floor more and make a 10-foot pass that they could easily he could throw with a nice chest pass. So a good lesson on the basketball side as well. Something you wouldn't normally think that Vince Carter would do with all the experience he had, but it happens to everybody.
It happens to everybody. And one last thing I just want to make sure that everyone knows, you cannot hand the ball in as a thrower in. Now, we have a lot of close ones because there's no defensive pressure. And in the NBA, we understand that. It's sort of an interpretation, coming across the line a little bit without stepping on and almost handing the ball in. But you cannot hand the ball in to your receiver when you are out of bounds. So that's another basic tenet of this play.
Well, another great rule that we didn't know. Let's move on to Houston and Memphis hooked up. And Dwight had 5 fouls and ended up getting kind of tied up with Marc Gasol down low. And it was a weird call because it ended up going against Gasol. What are your thoughts on this as a box out?
Well, you know what? And that's really what the title is, the box out. And I think what the officials did here was really the correct call, unless you really wanted to get it very early. And the very early problem was Howard's problem. And what did he do? He stiff-armed his opponent to keep have him distance himself so he can be the guy that captures the rebound. But so quickly that he did that, Gasol, in response to that, actually clamps him. And the clamp is the bigger thing today for the officials because they're looking for rebounders who clamp. So before you can even allow Howard to have been seen for what he's done, the problem is he clamps right away. Now both of them are in a kind of a funky looking position, and Gasol looks more the culprit, which he ends up being, than Howard. Trust me now, this is not an easy play, but this is a process play that if you get it early, you can clean it up early, especially when he sees what Gasol's doing. If Gasol is doing that to confront what Howard does, then we get the first fouler. But in this case, Gasol and the entire play here, it makes Gasol look more of the person of a problem. But you may not stiff arm someone to rebound, either facing them or away. That's a straight arm stiff arm, and that's not allowed in basketball on rebounding.
I see what you're saying, and for sure, I think that the question came up only because they thought he was getting preferential treatment because they didn't want to foul him out. But I see the clamp for sure, and if that's what they're calling, then that's a good call at that moment when they needed to, and ended up being a good call.
Yeah, it is a good call, and it was not an easy play. Rebounding plays, are always all good referees hold on plays that need to unveil themselves. And in rebounding, you'll see a lot of that later whistle because the whole thing is unveiled and there's a picture to what really went on. So in this case, they got the right guy at the right time.
Well, we have our next clip, which is Indiana versus Sacramento, and of course, it's another Hibbert verticality question. I knew from the start we were going to have a number of these throughout the year. A crucial part of the game, and Derrick Williams went up for a shot. It looked like it might have been a little contact. What is your thought on this play?
This play for me was inconclusive, and that only means that the camera views I was able to see didn't tell me whether we really had a shot at kind of a swipe, a swipe at the shooter. And if he swiped at the shooter, he might have caught his arm, the wrist area. It looked like there was a foul. And of course, down the other end, there was a similar play on a drive that went for Indiana. So in this play, I can't conclude that. And whoever can find it and see it and sees the contact, I welcome them to that call, and I would believe it. I did not see the entire play.
Yeah, it was strange looking at that. That once he brings his arm down, I would say 90% of the time they're going to call that foul, even if there isn't contact. When I coach my players, I say keep that hand up, take it out of the realm of possibility for a call. And it was unfortunate because Sacramento was at home and they were winning against a tough team.
Yeah.
And I would see what the question is. That to me wouldn't fall under verticality. That to me falls under it wasn't contact with the body. That was more they just assumed that there wasn't contact up above, right?
Right, and we're looking for a vertical arm, and I think that arm was chasing. And when a vertical arm begins to chase, it's no longer vertical. So that may be a piece that caught him on the forearm wrist on the way back up. Don't forget, there's two sizes of people there, and he might have gotten fouled, and also he might have got some of the ball too with the arm. I couldn't tell.
Interestingly enough, our last play of this episode will be at the end of regulation of this game between the Pacers and the Kings, where Paul George comes off a down screen and gets a call and hits the shot. So Ronnie, what did you see here?
I thought this was a very, very tough play. Remember earlier in the year we had the LeBron James play with the same player, Paul George, where one hand follows the other hand while the players are lighted. And, of course, the trajectory of his shot goes off, and everybody wants to know why there isn't a foul. So, remember, the officiating staff has that play in mind. And really on this play, there was nothing on top. There was a contact when George finally gets hold of the ball, and he takes his 2 steps into a jumper. And the contact that he was able to absorb, which was what I thought was marginal, got him into his jumper clearly. It didn't catch his leg. It didn't show. I mean, he might have wanted to do a little bit of that, but the contact was really such that it should have been a marginal play and no whistle on the play. I still think it was tough because the official, saw that maybe that contact was enough. And there's still a balance of figuring out when that contact is something and when it's nothing.
What do you think about this? My impression of having to analyze this play in real time as an official would be I would want to be stationary and really be able to study the movement. But what's interesting is that as soon as this play begins, the referee at the hash mark starts to walk right towards them, and now he's got a moving target to look at, aside from the fact that they're moving. What do you think about that?
I think his 2 steps that he moved towards the play, I think in this case was good because this wasn't actually a run or a sprint. So he was able to he wanted this play, and he moved to make sure that he did not lose his angle. So that kind of movement, I like seeing that in this official. I think the key is, though, I think is what he saw, and I believe he saw some contact. I think that was not enough to call. I really do. And that's very tough on jump shots. We all know that. Yeah. But I would, upon review, I hope that he sees that that's a play that he may have to live and die with a no whistle.
Now, thinking about this from a coach's standpoint, when you're up by 4, there isn't a need to really contest a three-point shot as much as you possibly could, i.e., he could have probably run underneath the screen and then put a hand up and still had that motion. You never want to get in that situation. That's the whole key here. Whether or not it's a good call or a bad call, which I think we agree it wasn't really meritorious of a call, you just don't want to put yourself in the situation if you don't have to. And so there's an example where, when you're down by 4, I think, and that's tough. This is advanced level thinking on a huge body of experience that you might or might not have. And perhaps Derrick Williams will put that in his mind somewhere. Very smart guy. We interviewed him last week, and maybe he'll put that in his mind somewhere and use it for future use.
I think that's a great point. This is a tough play for everybody because I think the announcers even mentioned you really have to be careful about what you want on a three-point shot. And one of the things we teach at New Hoops IQ is to make sure that you want to make a shot or make a shooter change the trajectory of his shot or make him feel really that he's got to maybe jerk that shot because you're close enough but not fouling. Your arms are up high enough but not fouling. And that's the best you want to get out of that because anything a little bit on a shooter in the game of basketball is always going to protect the shooter. So in this case, like I said, contact's there, appears marginal, and Paul George gets away where he obviously didn't get away when he deserved to down in Miami.
Well, the Kings had a bit of a rough stretch in that game with some calls I didn't agree with, but it sounds like your rough stretch is over, and we're moving onwards and upwards with the new knee and our new episodes in 2014.
Yeah, we're absolutely ready to go, and this is a very competitive year. It looks like teams that have started out kind of slow are picking up, especially in the East. So there's a lot of basketball left and a lot of work for officiating and a lot of work for players using their IQ.
And a lot of work for us as the interest increases. So thanks for joining us. And don't forget, sports fans, we got another episode coming up tomorrow right away to cover the rest of those 2 weeks that we were off. And stay tuned for that. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?
I'm in, Coach. Thanks for having me again.